Next we move to the draft submission on the government policy statement on housing and urban development. Welcome, Paul. So again, this has been through several workshops. And I note at this point as well that there will be a briefing at next week's urban development and transport meeting on intensification issues and upcoming RMA reforms, including this one. And so there'll be some more information at that point. But just specifically on the submission, did you want to give us a quick rundown, very quick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, a very quick rundown. You'll recall the briefing that we had with you 2 weeks ago. So we've sought to incorporate your feedback within the submission on that. You'll notice in the covering letter to the Ministry and within the officer report in there. So some of those principal points you were talking about were certainly re-emphasising the whole of government approach to this, taking into account and linking up to the other reform programs, the Three Waters, the local government reform, linking up solidly to the land transport, land infrastructure issues when the government position statement, policy statement on housing and urban development is given effect to. So those were some key concerns of yours, as well as recognising the key role and capacity that local government plays as an essential partner in the delivery and giving effect to it. So that was the feedback. You'll recall that our submission in general terms was saying, yes, this is a very good shift in direction and in terms of a fundamental reframing of how we think about housing, moving away from it as a commodity, from a market good to a merit good, so we can move away from a needs-based to a rights-based approach. So, and just on that rights-based approach, you'll recall that certainly our advice was to really push for much stronger reinforcement of housing as a human right within the GPS, be much more explicit about that, so all layers of government can give effect and deliver upon it much more effectively with much more accountability and monitoring. For example, addressing the issues around home ownership and housing and wealth inequality that are associated with the housing market today. So, thank you.
Thank you, it's a good summary. Do we have any further questions? Tim?
Yeah, and sorry, my computer just shut down for a minute, although obviously I'm a genius. With regards to this, a couple of things have been brought up, and it's been brought up by probably 3 people that have contacted me with regards to the infilling of sections. So we've had say one old house, it's had a big garden, trees, whatever, and then we infill, and generally it's about putting 4 places in, and there's very little garden. The demise of bees, etc., and that side of things, there's nothing really about that concern in the environment. And I just wonder if this is a format that we should be bringing that issue up, because I can see if you're looking at the sites, say of Addington and now Summerfield and Spraydon, it's coming, which is what the NPS is directing, is more infilling, more homes, etc. But there's also the side effect is the loss of green space. So I'm just wondering where that risk is, because it has been recognised that there is a demise of the bees, etc., and they are essential for life. So I'm just wondering, is there a place here for that, or has it been thought?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, Councillor, this is a GPS, so a government policy statement on housing and urban development. So the document gives emphasis to things around placemaking and urban regeneration.
Yep.
In terms of that level of detail at an NPS,
is it more likely to be the RMA reforms that comes in?
So that's probably more for the RMA reform and the which is coming to you tomorrow, and the National Policy Statement on Urban Development that we're looking at. But we have raised that this seems to be talking about housing and almost housing in isolation of all the other challenges that we've got on, and that we do need to have a consistent approach from government that actually recognises, yes, we've got a housing crisis, but we've also got a climate crisis and a whole lot of other things, and we do need to solve them collectively rather than just building houses and ignoring the other issues that we've got to do. So
I guess my concern is, when we take, we've got the MPS with regards to this, and maybe we look at this through the AMA or whatever, they're almost siloed with this,
Yes.
and there's actually no joining. When you mentioned, Paul, with regards to a built environment and trying to create an environment, that it's not really. But I'm not criticising at all. I think you've done a great job, but I just think there is how we link that, and obviously the government's not.
Yeah, I think, Tim, one of the points of the submission is that we've said actually that we want everything to be really joined up
Yes.
across all of those
Yes.
different things, so that we don't have those unintended consequences with a one-off and a siloed approach.
And thank you, Ms Chair. And Tim,
Yeah.
perhaps a really good analogy from a climate change perspective around dealing with housing is a managed transition, when you think about
Yeah.
that for housing,
Yeah.
to a more affordable, secure and accessible
Yeah,
form of homes.
that's great. Thank you very much. Do I have a mover for this? Oh, sorry, Phil?
Guys, I know I asked you earlier on at the briefing, but how much input has OCHT had into this?
Yes. So we furnished Otatahi Community Housing Trust with a draft.
Mm-hmm.
So they got that after our briefing with
good.
you.
So they've seen what
They've seen what
Thank
we've.
you.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
cool.
showed them theirs, and they've showed us theirs, so to speak.
Yeah.
So for sure, as you can imagine, that we share drafts, as we did with the Greater Christchurch Partnership submission. So
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Melanie's happy to move. Seconder, Yanni, or was that a question? Okay, Jimmy.
One more question, follow the field question. So accept the OCHT, the feedback to our council. How about the general public and the community, their view? They make their own submission or not regarding to this?
Well, of course, anyone can make a submission. What we've sought to do is just liaise, obviously, with the trust and the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and I guess community housing Aotearoa more generally. Yes.
Okay. But public still, eligible make their own submission?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
What
thank
date
you.
do submissions close?
On Friday.
Friday, right, okay. So you can put that up on your Facebook, Jimmy. Yeah. Okay. Yanni?
Just the we talk a little bit about capture, inclusionary zoning, value uplift. I mean, I just wonder whether we should be giving the examples of Selwyn and Waimak, which have the highest number of covenants preventing social and community housing in the country. So, like, it just doesn't seem very balanced that, let's free up all this land for housing, but it's only for a certain group of people. And we kind of touch on it here, but I just don't feel like we have enough emphasis on the profit that people are making off that rezoning versus what they're actually giving back in terms of addressing the community needs.
Certainly, and that's what those points around inclusionary zoning and value uplift capture are trying to address. We could add that, if you so wished, as another example of arguably exclusionary zoning practices by noting restrictive covenants, certainly in our surrounding areas. Did you want
Yep,
to add
yep.
anything?
I'd be happy to add a sentence
Yep.
that talks about the exclusionary
Yep.
policies. That,
You've got
yeah, we have them here too.
Good we do.
you've got it in the submission, but not in the actions. Or it's a little bit. It talks about examples.
So Yanni,
But I wonder that just
Yanni,
needs that
can I
clear
just get to the
recognition.
point that we've had several sessions looking at this and other things, and I'm really not wanting to do a whole pile of wordsmithing today and then have to delegate. Really happy to add a sentence in about the exclusionary stuff, and we could just do that in a resolution saying as with a change as discussed.
I just think maybe it's the format of the document, and it's a bit like, I think someone was saying, often when we get asked to give the feedback, we respond to the questions that they ask rather than being explicit about what we want. So I think actually the content is good. I just think we need to have really clear recommendations of things that we're asking for, rather than
Yeah.
Cool.
Just to check with you, Ms Chair, can we add that point into the existing paragraph around the inclusionary zoning and so on to
I
reflect
think
it?
that's
Is
where
that
it would
okay?
best. I think that's where it would best fit.
Yep.
Yeah, and so just making clear that inclusionary zoning means getting rid of exclusionary stuff.
And do we also have anything in here that talks about community development from the rights of people that, you know, being notified of things, not having a voice in local planning matters? I mean, I'm just a little bit concerned this will be used to justify why people shouldn't be notified when, you know, 6 stories go up right next to them, they lose their privacy, their son, they can't even, you know, maintain the properties without going to the neighbour's property.
We just, yeah, so that's quite a long question.
Well, no, well, so is there anything in here
yeah.
that talks about, we still think it's important that local communities have a say in developments that impact on their amenity?
That's nice and concise, thank you.
No, thank you. So this submission, I guess, talks about that probably at the next level up, just in general principles terms. David, do you want to add anything to that, how it might be reflected or captured?
In other documents
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Look, I mean, this is probably not the right document to get into
No.
that detail, but tomorrow when we're bringing the submission on the Natural and Built Environment Act, the new RMA, is definitely the right forum, and we have already got quite a lot of that content in there, so we can talk more about tomorrow.
So yeah, we do that one tomorrow.
Okay.
So there's 2 different. I think one of the key points is actually the stuff that that Tim mentioned earlier. It's about that holistic approach, and there's so many different documents at the moment. That key point of actually having everything well aligned is a crucial one. Okay. Any further questions, Aaron?
Yeah, what does 5.8 mean? Especially, this includes what financial mechanisms will address affordability first rather than promote a speculative property market, and how low-income households can affordably gain security through housing.
Sure. So I guess that's talking about what's available at all layers of government to address that. So you probably want to start at the top, for example, and work your way down. So you're talking about tax and finance and regulation policies like that and how they might financially impact. It's not suggesting, as it were, that local authorities need to do A, B and C if that's what you were asking.
But as a council, we're asking the government to address this, but what are we asking them to do? There, I mean, that's
Sure. Okay.
These are very big statements that are talking about essentially changing the entire way housing's been done in every developed country of the world for the last few hundred years. So it would be good to know what that means.
Okay, so we give some of the conversation we were having before around that Councillor Johansson was asking, so some financial tools and levers that way. We also talk about in our submission what the government can do in terms of its apparatus. So the Public Finance Act, for example, how it wants to fund and properly infrastructure in this country, all forms of social infrastructure, community infrastructure. So it's talking about that kind of investment as well. It's talking about how you assess and work out a whole social and economic justification for investing in housing as a key piece of infrastructure.
So can I just check though that what our submission isn't saying is that we've got the answers, is that we're asking the government to come up with those.
Yes, and other good examples would be government leading the way, working with government to establish these policy frameworks so local authorities up and down the country don't have to reinvent the wheel and do bespoke solutions all the time.
Yeah. So Aaron, is there a part in the actual submission rather than the covering report that deals with that you would like changing, in which paragraph you'd like to add a sentence or whatever? Or are you happy with the explanation at this point?
Well, if you understand it, congratulations.
That wasn't an answer. You don't want to change to the paragraph? No. Okay.
Yeah,
No, it's
actually,
not about 5.8.
what I've observed in the last number of years is the term housing crisis being used a lot, and then what has happened is there's been some major policy changes in our country to address a whole lot of situations, which there's a thing in the real world called unintended consequences, which kick into play every time something is done, and it skews the market even more.
I was just asking if you'd like to
So
change
I'm just trying to work out how we're solving some of those through this, and that was all. I was just trying to get to the bottom of that, because I'd like to be part of the solution.
Not a problem. Okay, are there any further questions? No? Okay. In that case, Melanie has offered to move it, and do I have a seconder? Jimmy? Any debate? I think we've probably had a bit already. Okay, in that case, I will move that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. Okay, like that recorded, Aaron. Declare that carried. Thank you very much.